In a meeting room at St. Mark's Episcopal Church, a group of people who either have suffered from opioid addiction or know someone who suffers from addiction gathered to learn how to administer the life-saving opioid suppressor NARCAN, which can reverse the effects of an overdose. Officials say the training is vital with the recent explosion of opioid use across the country and the growing number of subsequent overdoses.
I feel like we're averaging about one overdose a week. We also find out sometimes that Burlington residents are overdosing out of town, and then we get word of that. Well, I definitely think it's happening more often. We weren't dealing with these kinds of drug overdoses 5 years ago.
I started doing this in the 90s, and I never thought that the addiction, the opiate addiction, would be worse than it was during the AIDS epidemic, and it is exponentially worse. The drugs are stronger, they're more available, and more people are addicted. It is more deadly than it's ever been.
NARCAN was originally given mostly to emergency first responders. However, since time is of the essence when trying to save someone who has overdosed, experts say it's important for family members and friends to have the nasal injection at hand and to be trained on how to use it.
So as I said, as a clinician, I barely have anybody who's ever overdosed in my office. What happens is they overdose in their homes. They overdose when they're alone, or they think they're alone, or when they're using with other folks. So we need to get this out to the people who are going to be with them, the moms, the dads, the brothers, the sisters.
We think that if the public has the knowledge of how to administer NARCAN, they'll save time to save that life of someone who's possibly overdosing. The police or the fire department a couple minutes away, if it's someone who recognizes an overdose and they have a NARCAN available, they can administer and start hopefully that recovery process within 30 seconds real quick.
It's also important that loved ones of people suffering from addiction be able to recognize the signs of an overdose, something that was covered in the training.
So there's a death rattle or a gurgle. Their extremities are starting to turn blue, their lips. They're not responding to a hard sternum rub, which is hard pressure against their breastplate and their breastbone. And they're not responding to any kind of external stimulation, so give them the NARCAN. Always call 911 first and then administer NARCAN.
People may be squeamish about giving an unconscious person medicine, but fortunately, NARCAN is easy to use.
Don't be nervous. This is the easiest thing they can do. It's a nasal spray. It goes up their nose. It's not going to harm them. You can't give it to somebody who isn't overdosing and harm them. It's better to give it and be wrong than to not give it and have the person die. It's easy to give. It's easy to get. In Massachusetts, there's standing prescriptions at most pharmacies to get this medication. So people shouldn't be afraid. Call, get the training, get online, find somebody who can provide it.
Finally, Calvert said she wanted to clear up some misperceptions people may have about NARCAN and opioid addicts.
Well, there's lots. So first of all, it's not addictive. You can keep using it. It's not going to harm anybody. I guess the stigma is that why give it to somebody who's going to keep using? And as I always say, I can't help anybody who's dead. I need to help somebody who's alive, so I will keep doing this until that person hopefully receives the treatment that they need.
At St. Mark's, I'm B News Director Rich Hosford.